In last conversation with him, we explored how capitalism is shaping Indian morality. He's a renowned institutional investment consultant in the mining sector and the founder of the Capitalism and Morality seminars in Vancouver. With millions of views on his socio-cultural, economic, and political commentary, he brings a factual perspective on India's global positioning. Please welcome Jayant Bhandari. In last episode, we talked about wealth migration, chaos, and India's global standing. And this is our second round, and which was also under capitalism and morality. So we will discuss around that. So first question to you, Jayant, is when I see Indians these days, power fetish, fear-based culture, and kind of a power becomes a shortcut to dignity. I'm asking you this because we are talking about one of the top five economy in the world now. It's not just another country. How long we will keep talking about this colonial hangover?
Gautam, it is just another country. India is a nobody country. India is a non-entity because the size of GDP is not what matters. What matters is GDP per capita. On GDP per capita basis, India continues to be among the most poor countries in the world. I have traveled extensively in sub-Saharan Africa, in Latin America, and I can tell you that it is hard to find a place that is more backward and wretched than India is. So, yes, India might be the fourth or fifth largest economy, but that is the function of its population, not a function of its people's productivity. It is a primitive country, it's a backward country, and it will unfortunately continue to stay there. Now, the only reason India has some grounding in the international affairs is because India consumes a lot of commodities. It consumes a lot of oil, coal, iron ore. And because it does so, countries that produce those, when they sell maybe a few drops of oil to each person in 1.5 billion people country, it adds up to a huge amount of oil. So oil countries will be nice to India. Coal suppliers, iron ore suppliers, Australia, Indonesia will be nice to India. But that is all, that is the prestige of India. If you look at the international forums, India really doesn't get a place of standing. In United Nations, it's not even a part of the Security Council, despite being the largest democracy and the largest population country. But also, Indian regime is extraordinarily indecisive. It cannot take a stand on anything. It has no stand on Russia-Ukraine war. It does not want to respond to President Trump's invitation to join Board of Peace. It simply does not respond. It does not say yes. It does not say no. Now, I would be perfectly fine if India said no, but India doesn't. It is a country which is a pre-ideology country. It's a primitive country. It's a country which is a pre-rational country. So this is a similar state of existence, how the cultural operating system works, as was the case, let's say, in Greece 5 millennia back. This is an extraordinarily backward country where the concept of ideas don't exist and people haven't even agreed to start discussing ideas. I would be very ambivalent about India if it were a discussion between socialism or capitalism. But India is just a pre-ideology culture, and that is why animalistic instincts, the show of power, fetishes, are predominant in that society.
All right. Another thing is every society sort of developed based on scientific explorations, right? And when I see India, definitely there are a lot of good minds historically also and in today's date also. But that is probably 1 or 2%, or maybe less than that. Rest of the population, casteism, religious dogmatism, isn't it against the tide?
Gautam, your 1 or 2% claim about Indians being able to think for themselves is a massive exaggeration. With 1 or 2% of open minded, independent thinking people, you can change a society. Societies don't change because a majority changes. Society changes because a fraction of people in that society changes. Unfortunately, with India, forget about 1 or 2%. I would struggle to find a few scores of independent thinking people in that country. So that is the problem with India. Indian mind is not a scientific mind. It does not think in rational terms, and it is not a moral mind. It is actually not even an immoral mind. It is a amoral mind, which means that Indians cannot even differentiate between what is right and wrong. So, a criminal, a typical criminal who knows that he's immoral, knows that he's doing something wrong. Indians are not even aware of it. They are beyond that. They are amoral. They don't even think in terms of right and wrong. And in fact, Gautam, and I'm sure because you come from India, you have that experience. When Indians do something wrong and then they get away with that, they are all praised for themselves. And other people around them praise them from getting away with criminality. So Indians are actually a amoral, irrational people. And India is what I earlier said, where Greece was 5 millennia back. Now, India will take 5 millennia to get somewhere. Now, it is still a chance whether it will get there or not. So, anyone who thinks that India can be changed in a century or 2 century is completely out of his depth. He does not really understand how cultures work and how minds work. What is the contribution of India to humanity and to science? Literally and figuratively, it is zero. Um, the Indians really have no contribution to science. I struggle with what Indian contribution is to science. And even the concept of zero is accepted because the reality is that Indians wrote no history until the arrival of the Muslim rulers. So we don't even know where things started emerging, but it is a Western claim that zero, the concept of zero, started somewhere in the Middle East or in India. And being very self centered, egotistical, narcissistic people, we have, as Indians, very happily accepted that zero was a product of Indian mind. But unfortunately, that is the way it is. In fact, Gautam, you can go on and on. You can virtually pinpoint virtually every social enlightenment issue of India to foreigners. The British brought in enlightenment to India, and any of the modern ways of thinking that exist in India come from the West. But they are all superficial because they are not rooted in a rational moral mind, unfortunately, which means that they turn into perversions very rapidly.
Okay, but when it comes to institutions where there is a process, there is some rules or whatever, how Indian institutions structurally reward like civility and punish abuses of power consistently. Why still this struggle in today's day and age?
So Gautam, I have enough evidence with me that I can send one chief minister to prison in life. In China, he would be shot. I have similar evidence against a justice, not a judge, a justice in the country. Uh, I have similar evidences against very top people in the country. But what can you do? Because whosoever you go to with evidence will ask for his bribes. So rules and regulations mean absolutely nothing, because anyone you are going to encounter in position of power is interested in nothing but bribes. Indian government is a bribe collection agency. And I prefer to call it that way. I prefer to call every department of Indian government as a bribe collection agency, and every bureaucrat as a bribe collection agent, because that is all that is in the minds of these people. Now, you rightly asked what happened to the institutions. There were checks and balances. There was supposed to be competition in these institutions. But this is a mistake the British made, or maybe they did not make a mistake. They realized, they knew what was coming. British set up all these institutions. India did not have any of these institutions. Indians still do not understand the concept of the rule of law. They think in terms of rule of man. When a policeman in India, whether it's in Bengal or in New Delhi or in Chennai, if he stops you and you ask him under what rule has he stopped you, his response will be, my boss has asked me to stop you. So he has zero understanding of rules. Indians don't understand rules. Rules are used at best to manipulate the situation, not to do what is right. When you go to a court in India, and I'm talking about Bhopal, where I come from, this is all openly done. You bribe to the policeman who looks after the courtroom right in front of the judge. You bribe the bureaucrat who sets the next date right in front of the judge. And when you come out of the courtroom, you meet someone who says that he wants $2,000-3,000 or whatever worth of Indian rupees for the judge. Now, the judge will not even listen to you. He will only do one thing, which is set a new date. So you can have all the best institutions, the best regulations, but what are those going to do to you to improve a country when the people who are interpreting and applying those rules have no interest in those rules, and nothing can be done against those people if they don't follow the rules, because those people who apply checks and balances are not interested in those rules either. In fact, I would go a bit further and claim that they don't even understand the rules. My claim is that even the Supreme Court justices in India have no clue about the spirit of the constitutions or the rules. Had they any clue, they would not have taken many of the decisions. For example, they took about Kashmir or Ayodhya. You can't take court decisions based on emotions. You take court decisions on facts and reason. But unfortunately, I just simply don't see any evidence of this. And lastly, just look at this one justice, again, a justice, not a judge. He was found to have so much cash that the building that he was in caught fire. And this was about 4 or 5 months back. This is clear evidence that he was taking a huge amount of bribes in cash. And every Indian knows about it. Where is he now? He's still a justice. Why? Because no one can do anything. No one wants to do anything because everyone is in an orgy together, an orgy of corruption. They all take cuts of bribes from each other. So they can't really put anyone behind bars. So, and that is why I earlier said that having evidences make no difference in that country. The only reason way you can ever get any justice in that country through rules and regulation is if your matter becomes a social media viral issue. Once that happens, you might get justice, but otherwise there's going to be no justice. But even then, through social media, when you get justice, that is not justice because that is actually almost mob rule, because that will have been the instincts of mob pressurizing the system to do the right thing. And that is, it's still not a right thing because it's done for the wrong reason.
There are reports and, as you mentioned, social media narrative about Indian travelers and diasporic communities sometimes, clashing with local civic norms abroad. Do you think this is coming from insecurity, nationalism? I mean, why this unnecessary arrogance?
Well, clearly, those things play a role here. Insecurity is very much there. Indians have a massive amount of inferiority complex. That is indeed true because they know in the heart of their hearts that they are unproductive people and that they have no spine. It's an a spineless country, society, and a spineless culture. And they clash with civic norms in other countries because in India, if you have a dustbin, a trash bin next to you, you still prefer to throw your garbage on the floor because you don't want to look down at yourself in terms of your hierarchical position. If you are sane enough to put your garbage in the garbage bin, someone has to be demeaned who will pick it up and put it in the trash bin for you to feel superior. So, Gautam, this is very common in India where people feel better about themselves by demeaning other people. And that comes from inferiority complex. And that is actually a corruption of education and prosperity that has happened in India. So Indians today, in many ways, are worse than they were before the imposition of education and prosperity, which does not sit well on the psyche of Indians, has led to a massive amount of corruption, which neither exists in animals nor exists in rational people. So, what happens now is that these people go abroad and they don't know. They think that behaving the same way that they behaved in India is the way to look superior. So they will make noise, they will create garbage, they will create ruckus because for them it's a show of strength that they can get away with that. And when they can get away with that, they think they are superior people. Unfortunately, that is not the way the world works, but this is unstoppable, Gautam. This will pick up pace with time. Indians will create bad name because you can watch this on social media. You find someone says, "Hey, Indians have this issue." If 10 Indians came out and said, "Yeah, Indians have very likely this problem," which would be the case with Americans and Australians and Canadians. They are more open-minded, humble, down-to-earth people. So if someone's make an acquisition against Indians and people were humble enough, other party would automatically change his mind or get defeated. But what happens with Indians is that they right away start giving rape threats or start talking rubbish about other people's culture, which actually solidifies the original claim and provides support to that original claim. And it is unstoppable because Indians are irrational. They don't understand that what they are doing is contributing to a viewpoint internationally against them. Now, this has just started, Gautam. The anti-Indian views, I have never experienced it or seen it in the West, but I'm sure this will pick up pace because this has already entered the minds of certain Western people, and this will snowball eventually because Indians will participate in catalyzing event to let it snowball.
Okay. We are coming to another side of things. Data show nearly 1 million Indians basically leaving India. They're leaving their citizenship in the last 5 years. 4,000 millennials are expected to leave India in 2025. But the problem is with 26 plus billion dollars of wealth migration happened. And we are talking about capitalistic economy. I mean, how?
Well, Gautam, there is indeed a brain drain happening in the country, and this is picking up pace. So, intelligent people, people with some sense, do not want to live in that country. Now, 1 million or 2 million is noise in that country. It's a very small number of people. Remember, this would be 0.001% or there's probably another zero in between there, percent of the population. This is a minuscule population for a nation of 1.5 billion people. But sane people know that they cannot exercise their innovative capabilities or creativities or spiritual nature in that country because Gautam, this is the thing. 3 decades back, I was among the the most well-paid executives in India. What was my job? My job was to liaise and deal with bureaucrats and politicians in New Delhi, which was about whining and dining these lowlifes. Anyone who is successful, who has education or brain, is immediately involved into dealing with corrupt people and very low life corrupt people because these are very brain dead people sitting in bureaucracy and in the seats of politicians. So a sane person has an incentive to leave, but these people still amount to, I would say, not a lot of people. The biggest chunk of Indians leave for two reasons. One is that these are the richest people in the country who leave for Dubai or some other places, Hong Kong or whatever, to protect their wealth from expropriation. In an irrational economy, in an irrational society, you have no friends. You don't trust your own families, you don't trust your own friends. Indians need to protect their wealth. That is why they leave. They don't have jobs. The mid-sized people and the lower wage people don't have jobs. So they leave for that reason. But apart from a very, very, very small fraction of people who are sane enough, who want to assimilate in the West, who believe in Western values, the very vast majority of Indians who leave India leave because of financial reason, not because they want to detach themselves from India. And that is why virtually all these Indians who leave India stay so-called nationalistic. This is the term you used about Indian nationalism earlier. But this is a nationalism and attraction not out of common values among Indians. This is an attraction India has for Indians because they feel so unrooted in a foreign society. Most people prefer to live where they grew up in. The smell of the earth, is the music, the food, that is their attraction. And they actually even prefer the chaos and the poop smell around them. So again, virtually all Indians who leave India leave for financial reason and their heart stays in India.
Another thing, many Indians see themselves as innovative, entrepreneurial, spiritually grounded. I hate this term, but I hear many times giving back. Yet external narrative is very different, isn't it?
Well, I don't even know if any of these three terms you mentioned, you said entrepreneurial, innovative, and spiritual, they don't even exist in the society in India. Now, Gautam, I grew up in a business family. I have run companies in India. I have no proof of a claim to innovation, but I regularly practice Vipassana meditation. This morning, I meditated in the morning. I've been doing it for 3 decades. But any claim that India is, let's address this one by one. Entrepreneurial. What is Indian entrepreneurialism? Tell me one real Fortune 500 company that Indians have created by themselves. What is in Silicon Valley, where I live, where Indians have created? They are bureaucrats. Now, I'm not saying they are bad people. I have nothing against the CEO of Google or many other Indian CEOs, but they did not create those companies. They are administrators who rose through the ranks, and they must be very intelligent people. So I have nothing against them. I actually feel good for them.
But one thing is like when I'm talking about in Kolkata or in West Bengal, I mean, 10 years back, if you are in business, people not even see you in a good light, you know? That means you are corrupt. That means you are like snatching money from somewhere. And that mentality is still very strong in the community.
It is. People hate and envy other people, and as I said, it's an amoral country. It's a pre-morality country, society, which means that they have nothing like 10 commandments. So in the Western world, when you succeed, if people are envious, they hide their envy because they know, they are conscious of the fact that envy is bad. But in India, envy runs wild because there's nothing to constrain it. And this is the problem with Indian mind. But also, there is no doubt that Indian businesses actually are mostly scamming entities. Indian businesses think in terms of transferring money from your wallet to their wallets. Indian businesses do not think in terms of providing a service to their clients. Now, also, Gautam, given this culture that India is, as a businessman, you fully understand that your most of your time goes away in dealing with the hugely corrupt bureaucracy and the ruling regime, which means that you don't really have a space left in your mind to provide or think in terms of providing a service to your clients. So unfortunately, businesses by its their because of the nature of the culture become extraordinarily corrupt. And I fully understand why so many people, the people who start waking up are anti-capitalistic in that country because they have never seen a company providing services in that country. So this is about entrepreneurs in the country. There's no entrepreneurialism. It's everything becomes a vehicle to transfer money from your wallet to their wallet. Now, innovation, we talked about it earlier. There is nothing, Gautam, that I see or I have ever seen, and I have lived long enough that my anecdotal experiences add up to statistically valid understanding of reality. I have seen virtually no creativity and innovation in that country. Now, Indians can be very resourceful. Indians can be very resourceful, but even animals can be very resourceful because if you have no creativity, then you have to be resourceful. You have to learn to fool the bureaucrats who are very brain dead. You have to learn to dodge the system because the system is always after you. So people become resourceful in a way, but this is not creativity. And finally, spirituality. Spirituality is a word that was imposed on India by Westerners, particularly the hippies of the 60s, who came to India, started doing a lot of drugs and started doing a lot of stretching exercises. And then they put a label of yoga over those stretching exercises. They did a lot of drugs. Their US dollar went very far in India. So they were very happy, even if they were broke and pretty much poor in the West, were treated very well in India because white skinned people are treated especially well in that country. Even today, they are treated as if they are god and goddesses. So they were treated well. They were on drugs and they were doing a lot of sex. So they thought, in their minds, India felt like a spiritual country. But that would be exactly the case with me when, after 2 months of never drinking any alcohol, I worked for non-stop for many days and ended up in a bar Friday evening. I would really enjoy a couple of drinks at that point of time. But that is catharsis, not a spirituality. So no, Gautam, there's no spirituality in that country. Now, yes, of course, I mentioned Vipassana. I do Vipassana regularly. But for a country of 1.5 billion to have a small tail end things happening in that society does not mean that that society is a spiritual country. In my view, Indian spirituality is at similar level as is the spirituality of sub-Saharan Africa. India is not comparable to any of the Western countries, any of the East European countries, any country in the Far East. It is not even comparable to Malaysia or Thailand. That's how backward and spirituality less India is.
In 2024 corruption perception index, Denmark scored 90 out of 100, which is in the top. But okay, I can understand India is not in the top one. But the funny is China came in 76th place. India came in 96th place, almost close to each other. Huge country, huge population. Why China's development speed is out of this world?
Gautam, I don't understand, and I have seen this ranking myself, and I simply don't get it. Now, let's put it this way: I have never met an Indian bureaucrat who does not ask for a bribe. So, Indian corruption, in my view, is 100%. There's no bureaucrat or politician who does not ask for a bribe in that country. Absolutely everyone does. And there's no way you can exist in a government office in that country and not be corrupt. And there's no way, Gautam, that you can be a citizen of that country and not be corrupt, because you have to pay bribes. If you want your water connection to work, you have to pay bribes. If you want electricity connection, you have to pay bribes. I have spent most of my time in the last 3.5 decades in the West. I have not once paid a bribe. I work in the mining industry. Still, even in this industry, I have never ever had to pay bribes. Now, bureaucrats can be apathetic, they are not interested, they are slow, they are indecisive, but never for a second did a thought occur to me that I needed to offer a bribe to that person. Whereas when I go to an Indian government office, the first thing I have to do is to play in my mind how I'm going to discuss bribing with him. Because the problem is, Gautam, that even after I have given bribes to the bureaucrat, he's not going to do the job. So I have to strategize how I pay bribes to him. So they are not only corrupt, they are dishonorable as well. Now, moving on to China, I have been going to China for the last 2 decades now, and I have spent months at a time in China. I have never paid a bribe in China. And China is probably more honest today than I would say many of the Western countries. Xi Jinping, you can blame him for many things in life, but you have to accept one thing, that Xi Jinping seriously removed corruption from public life in China. A good example is my own suffering, Gautam. My clients and I invested very heavily in casinos and pleasure centers in Macau 15 years back, because China was growing very fast, and we thought that corruption money was coming, bribes were coming to Macau for laundering. And we thought, being an Indian, I thought very clearly that Macau would grow very well. Macau was already several times the size of Las Vegas by that point in terms of casino revenue. So we thought we would make a lot of money. Of course, we wouldn't be doing anything illegal. We would just be shareholders in casinos and pleasure centers. We lost all that money. Our dollars went into pennies and disappeared into zeros. And the reason is that Xi Jinping put such a control on corruption in that country that, from what I have seen, bureaucrats don't even think about asking for a bribe. There are a lot of Chinese who are against Xi Jinping, who are against CCP. And I invariably asked them, I said, when did you last pay a bribe in China? Most of them admit that they have never paid a bribe, not paid a bribe in the last 10 years or so. China should be very close to a Western country in terms of corruption index, because it has actually become relatively corruption free. And in fact, in the West, if you're corrupt, there are ways for you to get around it. There are so many easygoing judicial processes that would let you escape from most corrupt practices. Westerners are honest because that is the culture. They are moral people. It's a Western society is founded on 10 commandments. It's a society of morality, even though people know they can get away with corruption and theft. China has become something similar. Now, China, of course, has many flaws. It is still a second world country. So I'm not saying this is the zenith of enlightenment yet. But China should be much closer to a Western country, also because corruption is seen so negatively in China. You get horrible punishments for being corrupt in that country. So I don't even know why it has any number lower than Denmark today in terms of corruption per se.
We are almost in the last phase of it, and everywhere or many places it says India is kind of a sleeping giant, like any from any given angle. In what sense? I mean, how are you seeing it
So
in next couple of decades?
So Gautam, I don't know how much physics and chemistry have you studied in school or in the university, but theoretically, it is possible to convert lead into gold because you only have to reorganize the electrons and protons and neutrons to convert, and a very small reorganization. In mathematical terms, it's a minor reorganization that would convert lead into gold. In practical terms, it is impossible. It will cost you trillions and trillions of dollars probably to convert a few micrograms. I don't know the numbers, I'm just making it up here. It is virtually impossible to do that conversion economically. Um, India is not a sleeping giant. India is lead and it will never become gold. And India is rotting away. The dust, the weather is corroding away even that lead. So India is not only not a sleeping giant, it's a rotting giant which is dying and falling apart with time. Where will India be in 10 or 20 years from now? I don't know. I don't even know if it will be a single country, but it will be in a far worse shape than it is today.
On that, we should end our podcast here. Let's see what God has written for us or for Indians. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gautam. We write our own destiny, not God. We should believe in God, but not for what God has written for us. But thank you very much for the opportunity.